Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Gordon Ramsay to my Aaron Ramsey. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Justin, how are we?
I'm good. It's always this in-between period where things are a little bit dull. Run out of things to watch on TV. There's no sport to really satisfy the taste buds of being busy. But at least we're doing this. At least we're recording a podcast and keeping ourselves out of trouble. But other than that, I'm great, Ryan. I'm really good.
I'm glad you brought up we're still recording a podcast thing, because I was having a look through my podcast feed the other day and it's quite ridiculous how few podcasts are still putting out content. Like all the podcasts I listen to, I think there's only one which is stuck to its usual schedule. And I accept there isn't much football going on right now, but still, there's plenty of stuff for us to talk about, isn't there? So we're one of the only podcasts which are actually, still giving something back to the listener. I think it's quite unacceptable from other podcasts.
I completely agree. They are doing everybody. They're doing the world a disservice. The complete world. Everybody on this rock floating around space right now, they're doing everybody a disservice. But also, can you imagine the backlog of news they're going to have to cover when they do return? How stressful that'll be. It's a bit like, I don't know, doing a shopping at the end of the week and getting everything on a Sunday. It's crazy. It's manic. It's awful. Just do it bit by bit during the week and you'll be fine.
I'm not sure about that simile, but I see where you're coming from. Some podcasts have literally finished the season and then not put anything else out since. And that's poor in itself. If you just do a weekly news roundup at the very least. That's what we're doing, and we're putting something else on top as well.
Plus, what else are we going to do? Go on holiday? Have a break?
Do they think we are Tories? No, but I do think it is like, I think you've got a duty as a podcaster, particularly a football podcaster, to keep putting out content, because people are still going to work, people are still going to the gym, people are still going on walks or whatever they do while they're listening to the podcast. And now there's like, people are struggling around, scrimming around to try and find something to listen to.
Yeah. And who are they going to abuse during this quiet period? Nobody.
Exactly. So we're getting more abuse than usual, despite being one of the only podcasters actually going out there and doing more stuff. Gets me so exercised, Justin. Anyway, welcome to the #1 Championship podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Yes, it's another news roundup, and my God, there is plenty for us to talk about from the past week. We now finally have managers at Leeds United and Sheffield Wednesday. Both of them have finally got someone in through the door. So we'll talk about both of those appointments. We'll also talk about all the latest transfer news from the past week and a few other bits and pieces as well. We'll also finish off with Scott High and Ryan Lowe right at the end. So let's kick things off with Leeds United, and Daniel Farke is their new manager. It seemed for a long time like it was going to be him, but the move was being held up by the takeover. Justin, you were excited before about this appointment. I assume you still think it's a good appointment.
I do. I really, really do. I think it's a safe appointment given his championship record. But looking into it a little bit deeper, his time at Norwich in the championship, especially, was really quite fruitful. And I think even in the Premier League, he did his best with what he had. I think would be the way to describe it. But as I say, looking into things a little bit deeper, obviously at Norwich, utilised that 4-2-3-1 quite heavily. I think that's a quite nice bedrock to really sit on. The spine of the Leeds team is something that interests me. As long as they retain most of their players, you've got a spine of Meslier, Charlie Cresswell, Pascal Struijk, Patrick Bamford, potentially Rodrigo. There's a really good group of players there that Farke can build the team around. And then when you look into the philosophy side of things, I don't think it's too dissimilar to what the philosophies were built on with Marcelo Bielsa, in that it's high press attacking football. Obviously, there are big differences, but that is the crux of Daniel Farke ball, really, is getting on the front foot and putting opposition under pressure. And that's what he's going to want to bring in. And I think that's going to be a nice transition for those Leeds players who have been used to that style over the last few years. And he's got ability of bringing young players through at Norwich. We've seen the likes of Max Aarons, Ben Godfrey, Jamal Lewis, Todd Cantwell. They've all come through. James Maddison broke through into the first team under Daniel Farke as well, which everybody forgets, because everybody forgets that really dull season under him in his first year at Norwich. So yeah, for me, I'm really excited. I think his points per game, for example, at Championship level was 1.8. That's including that season where Norwich finished 14th. I think it's a really good appointment. I think it's a really smart appointment, especially at Championship level. And I think if he's going into this with a point to prove as well, given his spells at Mönchengladbach and the Premier League spell of Norwich City. So yeah, top appointment there, I think, from Norwich, Leeds. I'm going to say Norwich.
I'm going to disagree with you, Justin. I'm not a fan of this appointment. I'll start off by saying Daniel Farke did a wonderful job in the Championship with Norwich. They blitzed the league twice, playing beautiful football along the way. It's undeniable how good a job he did in the second tier with Norwich previously. I've got a few concerns, though. The main one is his tactical naivety, which got horrendously exposed twice in the Premier League. Norwich were abysmal on 2 occasions in the top flight under his watch. Sure, they didn't sign very well and they were always going to struggle, but he didn't make them competitive in any way. And they were just basically the whipping boys twice when they were in the Premier League. He's coming off the back of a season at Borussia Mönchengladbach where he was sacked after one season. They were aiming for the European places, but finished mid-table. When he was at Norwich, he needed a full season before things got going, which you quite rightly say people forget about. Will Leeds be as patient? I'm not so sure. I'm not sure the fans in particular will be as patient. They'll be expecting to get back to the Premier League at the first time of asking. And considering how long it took Farke to get going at Norwich, I don't think that will be the case. And will Leeds be as patient, especially when you consider only one manager has lasted longer than a year in the last 9 years at Leeds, and that was Marcelo Bielsa, an exceptional manager. So the thing is as well, when things did get going for Farke at Norwich, it was in large part down to the fantastic business that Stuart Webber did when he initially came in. You look at the 2 promotion seasons, they had 2 exceptional players in Emi Buendia and Timu Pukki at this level, 2 of the best players ever really at Championship level. And would he have managed to get a tune out of Norwich without those players there? I highly doubt it. So I don't like this appointment.
I understand where you're coming from, but I think if you pick the bones out of it and focus on those 2 championship seasons where he really thrived, I think that's where I'm focusing my attentions, especially. That being said, you mentioned they weren't competitive, but they did pick up some good results in the Premier League. They beat Man City, for example, at Carrow Road. They showed
one off though, Justin.
I know.
Nathan Jones knocked Man City out of the League Cup.
Yeah, true. He stopped the historic quadruple, didn't he? No one gives him credit for it. But anyway, there were murmurs of quality from Norwich when they were confident and when they could get going. But for me, I think at Championship level, I think this is as astute as you can get, unless you're trying to pluck an unknown from an unknown league, or you get surprised by a Marcelo Bielsa type appointment. I think this is a safe appointment. I think it's a good safe appointment, I should say. And as I say, that philosophy I think is going to help things as well. It's a high press. It's an attacking style. Leeds score a lot of goals. They did last season, but they conceded a lot. And I think naturally that will tighten up anyway. But for me, under Farke, I think there's a really good squad here. I think we're underestimating how quality this squad currently is without potential departures going on over the next few weeks. Jack Harrison, for example, in the Championship would be ridiculous. Joe Gelhardt, mentioned Charlie Gressel, Sam Greenwood. There's some really good youngsters coming through as well. So I'm more optimistic than you, which is a change actually. You're the optimist. I'm definitely not. So different side of the fence there. I
think what you were just saying about players leaving, I think there's going to be loads of players leaving Leeds over the next few weeks. Most other players who they signed in the Premier League have made murmurs about wanting to leave, which isn't a good place to be in the first place. So I wouldn't get too excited about the squad that he may potentially have available to him. I think it may look very different to the one that they had last season. You say it's a safe appointment. I'm getting strong Slavisa Jokanovic at Sheffield United vibes from this, where you look at his Championship record and it's fairly untouchable, but then it just went completely wrong for whatever reason. And you'll admit, Justin, at the time when that appointment was made, you'd have thought that was a safe appointment, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, you are right. It's This is why, I mean, every appointment's a risk. And I do think it is a safe appointment because of his championship record. But there is that element of risk to it that he's not done it anywhere else other than Norwich. So he might struggle at Leeds. But, I'd hope that he's had enough experience by now to avoid that situation. But it's a fair argument. It's a good point. And, Slavisa Jokanovic did really struggle, but that was a real stylistic issue. That was a big problem. And I think that's the big difference with this and Farke. I don't think it's that different in terms of styles, moving from Bielsa and Marsh to. I don't consider Sam Allardyce in this. He had 4 weeks in charge. I don't think it's.
Are you back? What did you say?
I don't think it's a big stylistic revolution for Daniel Farke. So natural endpoint, I think.
Just say what you said again. You said, I don't think you were just talking about Allardyce and that. Just carry on from there.
I wouldn't consider Sam Allardyce in this scenario. He had 4 weeks in charge. I don't think it's a big stylistic revolution for this squad. It's, as I say, it's going from Marsh to Bielsa, ignoring Gracia and Allardyce to Daniel Farke. Those two are only in charge for a limited amount of time. I think this squad is more adapted to playing Farke ball than it is Allardyce ball or anybody else.
I just think if you compare Leeds to the other relegated sides, it feels as if Leicester and Southampton have been more ambitious and imaginative with their appointments. They've gone for managers with potential who could be the start of the project. If all being well, Maresca, Martin could be in charge of Leicester and Southampton respectively for years to come. I wouldn't trust Daniel Farke in the Premier League based off what he did with Norwich before. So I think if you're looking at this from a Leeds perspective, you're just looking at Daniel Farke and saying, get us back to the Premier League, which I think is his chief job. I just think I think they've played it too safe.
Probably. But then again, they're a new regime coming in, so they probably looked at the record and gone, right, let's get him in. That might be the case as well. But yeah, I do think, I honestly do think, I think the appointments of Russell Martin and Enzo Maresca are two riskier appointments than Daniel Farke, mainly because they don't have the track record that Farke does in the Championship, and obviously with Maresca,
of course they are, Justin.
Yeah, well, this is it. They're hard to compare, but when you look at managers elsewhere around that are available, it's not the best of time, I think, to be going out and getting appointments. I think the boat's been missed. I think in terms of getting sort of high profile managers, you look at Michael Carrick going in at Borough, that was a risk, but he's done well. Before that, the year before that, Chris Wilder was available, for example. Everyone would have been swimming to get him. I don't think we have that, selection of managers around at the moment to really pick from, which I think has made things a little bit harder for those teams coming down from the Premier League. And the budgets make it harder as well, I think, as well.
Well, you look at the people who did really well in the Championship last season, they were basically all risks, really. Vincent Kompany was undoubtedly a risk coming in from Belgium after a so-so spell at Anderlecht. Paul Heckingbottom, wasn't really looked upon in the greatest of eyes. He wouldn't have got a job at any other Championship side, I don't think, before he went to Sheffield United. Rob Edwards had just been sacked by Watford and previously was just managing in League Two, 1-2. Mark Roberts has been in charge at Coventry for a while now, so we'll discount him. Michael Carrick was previously just a coach, hadn't had any previous managerial experience. So I think you've got to take a risk nowadays. And that's what, Southampton and Leicester have done, whereas Leeds have played it too safe. And that's just why I think you've got to be a bit more imaginative with these appointments now. And I don't know, I'm just not getting good feelings about this appointment, I've got to say. Anyway, let's head down the M1 to Sheffield, where Wednesday have appointed a new manager after the departure of Darren Moore. Former Watford boss Xisco Munoz is taking over. He won promotion with the Hornets in 2021. Xisco Munoz, Justin.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I find it really difficult to judge him. I've reading a lot of what the Watford fans have said. I've seen a lot of comments saying no tactics, just vibes, which is an interesting thought process in terms of the appointment. Looking at his track record as well, I thought he had a deeper track record at a managerial level. But actually, I think he was quite lucky to get the Watford job, to be honest with you. But again, looking into what Watford fans are saying and looking to the numbers, a lot of Wednesday fans are thinking they've got an attacking coach. Don't think that's the case. He's not a defensive coach by any means, but if you're looking at that Watford team, the principles in which that Watford team was built on that season under Vladimir Rivic was painfully boring defensive football. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal to watch, and it was the year everybody was at home and you could switch off. And I imagine a lot of fans may have done that. But that being said, he won 18 of his 26 games in charge, which is a good record. At the same time, again, if you're looking at it tactically, built the team around Sarr, came in and got a little bit more out of the attack. And that really pushed Watford over the line. So I find him incredibly difficult to judge. If I was to compare him and Darren Moore, I don't think it's a big improvement or any improvement at all. I think I would have rather have kept Darren Moore, to be honest with you. And again, if Sheffield Wednesday fans are thinking they're getting this attacking coach, Xisco Munoz is going from the likes of Ismaila Sarr, João Pedro at the time, going from those sorts of players to Michael Smith and Callum Patterson. It's a big technical drop-off, So it'd be interesting to see what he can do with them. I don't think the squad's built for a manager of his style if it is attacking football that we're getting from him.
Do you not think it's a safe appointment, considering what you were just saying about Farke and his record at Championship level?
Well, he won promotion. I think that's a Chancery thought process, but it's not a two-season league blitz, is it? They finished second, and a manager the previous half of the season did the groundwork for him. So I don't think it is that safe, no.
Well, it just seems like you're contradicting yourself based off what you're saying about Farke, Justin. I'm concerned with this appointment. We're talking about a guy who, since leaving Watford, has had a bit of a stinker. He went to Huesca in the Spanish second tier and was sacked after winning 9 games from 30. And then he was sacked at Anorthosis Famagusta in Cyprus after just 3 months. So not great since he's left Vicarage Road. But going back to his spell at Watford, he did a good job, undeniably, getting them promoted. He was working with an extremely talented squad, though, who were already underperforming when he came in. You got Ismaila Sarr, João Pedro, etc. They were expected to do much better than they were doing, and then he came in and basically just did that. Then he got to the Premier League and was really exposed as a manager and sacked very early on. Would I want him in charge of a side looking to stay up? No, I wouldn't. Tactically, I don't think he plays the kind of football that would suit that kind of side. Having said that, I'm not really sure what his tactics are. Initially, I thought he was a kind of front foot kind of manager, but having looked into it a bit deeper, I just don't really know what his style was. Just seemed to be get it to Ismaila Sarr, let him do something. But I think he'll be well liked by the players. There were loads of Watford players saying they really enjoyed playing under him, and that's all well and good. But you need a bit more of a tactical nous about you, don't you, to actually stay up in the Championship. Mm-hmm. They'd have been much better off getting a Dean Smith or Nathan Jones, in my view. But I mean, out of the managers I saw them linked with, it looked like it was going to be one of 4 or 5 managers up until the last couple of days. And I think he was probably the one I thought would be the worst option.
Definitely. I agree with you. A safe appointment in Dean Smith or Nathan Jones would have been a much better option. But I don't think that's the Chancery way. I think his safe appointments tend to have fared a lot better than his risky ones. You're looking at Josh Lukakai, for example. I mean, Carlos Carvalho was a risk, to be fair. That worked out. But Steve Bruce came in. That was a safe appointment. Did well in his short time. Darren Moore was a safe appointment as a short time. Then Gary Monks as well in there. So not necessarily the case. But nonetheless, I think this one is a risk. And also it's a risk based on not too much background into Xisco Munoz, just because, as I say, his track record's not the best. I know he got Watford promoted, but is that enough to really convince you that he's the man to take charge of this team from a team that's been built upon by Darren Moore? We've seen how together that squad was in numerous videos after that playoff final. So to go from that to a complete unknown in some respects is a giant step. I've seen a lot of people say he's a really nice guy, but nice guys don't win football games, do they? you need your Neil Warnocks, and to quote Jose Mourinho, you need to be a bit more of a bastard. So maybe that's not the way forward. It's a left field appointment, and one that I don't think will last too long, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think he may very well continue the kind of good vibes in the changing rooms. I firmly think that if Sheffield Wednesday head into next season with the current starting 11 they've had, ignoring the squad depth for a sec, because squad depth is a huge problem considering they've only got 17 senior players on their books. They went into the next season with the starting 11 they've got, plus maybe 2 centre halves. They'd be absolutely fine. Now that they've got this appointment over the line, my feeling is that they're more in danger of going down before this appointment than before this appointment, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So just because it is such a risk, it's a huge risk, especially after, that Watford spell, that short Watford spell was the only thing you can really look at and say, yeah, that's proven experience at a decent level. So, yeah, I'm really, really not sure about this one, I've got to say. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll go through all the transfer news from the past week in the Championship. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. This is a news roundup, and it's time for us to go through all the transfers from the past week in the Championship. And we'll start off with Cardiff, who reportedly could be bringing Aaron Ramsey back to his boyhood club. TalkSport say he's held talks over a return. He's a free agent after leaving French side Nice. Interested to know what you think, Justin, on this one. Would certainly be one of the biggest transfers of the summer, wouldn't it?
Yeah, without doubt. I think firstly, I was surprised to learn that he's going to be 33 in December. For some reason in my head, he's still 27. It's just been 27 for the last 5 or 6 years. So to find out he's going to be 33 in December, not only makes me go, oh Christ, he's getting on a bit, but also makes me think, oh Christ, I'm getting on a bit as well. But yeah, I think this is a transfer that definitely sits in the heart section, doesn't it, of logic. It's an emotion based transfer, which I'm all for, because I think if you look at Aaron Ramsey's performance for Wales, he's done very, very well for Wales, a lot better for Wales over the last 4 or 5 years than he has done at club level. So I think that's if we're going from that angle, I think it's a good signing. If this was any other team, not Cardiff, I would stay well clear of it. I wouldn't go near Aaron Ramsey. Mainly because looking at the last few years, he's not started over 20 games since 2017-18 season, which is quite a long time ago now. And there's the injury record as well. And then there's the fact that it's a 46-game season in a championship. Obviously, he's not going to play every week, but if you get a player of his quality and he gets injured and you build a team around him, you've got a big problem. Sure, if you get legs around him, I think the likes of Joe Rolls, Andrew Rinomhota, I think players like that, if you get them around him, I think he could potentially do well. But logically speaking, it's not a transfer that makes sense. But as I say, that factor of coming into your boyhood club might outweigh the logic behind the signing, and he might do well for Cardiff. I think that's the only thing that's really going for him at the moment, is the fact that he's going to be returning to his boyhood club, and it couldn't lock a Wales type run of form for him. But as I say, any other club, I'd stay well clear of it.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you just said there, Justin. I still think Aaron Ramsey is a very good player. He rediscovered some form in France, was starting pretty much every game Nice had in this 12-game unbeaten run they had around wintertime. Wasn't suffering with injuries too much either, considering they've dogged him quite a lot throughout his career. That's a big plus, so that's all very good. I'm just looking at this and I'm getting a bad feeling about it. I'm sure it'll make the fans happy. It's a nice bit of nostalgia. He's a big name. Fans like these kind of signings, don't they? I'm not a fan of these kind of signings, though. There's loads of examples of them not working, loads more examples of them not working than working. You've got Craig Bellamy joining Cardiff as an excellent example of it working, although Bellamy, his performances were at a much higher level than Ramsey's are now. Then you've got the examples which didn't go so well, the likes of, off the top of my head, Troy Deeney to Birmingham, Shane Long to Reading, Jonathan Woodgate to Middlesbrough, Tom Huddleston to Derby. Just a few off the top of my head where they didn't really work out, despite getting quite a bit of fanfare from the supporters at the time. I also don't think this move is going to be cheap. He won't be on his Nice wages at Cardiff, but I think fans will underestimate how much of a pay cut or overestimate how much of a pay cut he'll be taking to go to Cardiff. He won't be playing for a pittance. I'm looking around at Cardiff's squad and I'm thinking they need a lot more than just an aging Aaron Ramsey. They've got one of the weakest squads in the league in my eyes. So while I think this move will get fans excited, and that's fine, the reality in these types of scenarios very rarely matches the expectations. And you're quite right. He wouldn't be getting another Premier League club now, so he's not a Premier League player anymore. If he went to a top, one of the relegated sides from the Premier League, I'd be a bit concerned. So they may be paying over the odds for a player who he may not match the expectations, as I was just saying, really. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it brings good vibes to the club, but Cardiff need a lot more than just an aging Aaron Ramsey.
Yeah, completely agree with that. As I say, I think the only factor that's going for him, logically speaking, is the fact that he's returning to his boyhood club. So it might unearth that the form that he showed for Wales over the last couple of years. And we know how good that Aaron Ramsey has been. And to be fair, that team's been built around legs around Aaron Ramsey as well. So that might be a factor that plays into it. But I think, as I've said, I think any other club would just say no to him because it's just too much of a risk unless he's coming in as a squad player who on a significantly reduced salary, as you say. But look, I think Cardiff need a bit of inspiration, and I think this could provide it. I think, as I say, all of the good things that point to this transfer are the ones that don't sit with any logic whatsoever. So, and sometimes that works. So I do think it could be a good signing, but there are just too many variables that are working against Aaron Ramsey in the Championship to really make me get excited about it. And I think not being a Cardiff fan probably doesn't help that. But look, if he comes in, does well, plays 30 games, scores 7 or 8 goals, and contributes to them staying up, he's had a good year. So that might be the factor, but there's got to be a lot going in their favour for that to happen.
Yeah, it's a very favourable way of looking at it, isn't it? But what you're basing that on is a big question.
Yeah.
Let's discuss the confirmed deals in the Championship from the past week and stick with Cardiff. They've signed former Chelsea striker Ike Ugbo on loan from French side Troyes. We'll go with that. I don't have a clue. He scored twice in 24 games in League 1 last season after signing for £2.5 million from Belgian side Genk. Cardiff need a striker. Justin, is he the answer?
To be honest with you, not quite sure. There's not a lot to go off. He's not been a prolific forward in his senior time so far, but they need depth in that final third. I think I really like the look of Kane Atete last season. I know he picked up a couple of injuries, but that's the player I would be leaning on. Again, it's a bit of a left field signing, but he's got pedigree in England, which is useful. And he was a highly rated prospect at one point at Chelsea, but he's a difficult one to nail down because he's not had a particularly prolific record. That being said, if you're putting Callum Robinson behind him, it might get more out of Callum Robinson. So you don't always need a striker who's going to come in and score 15, 20 goals. As long as it unlocks the potential in others around him, that might be useful. But I do think Cardiff's priority is getting more creativity into that team and getting a Sorry Cabba-like player in. And I don't think Ugbo is that type of player, to be fair.
I think they need a bit more creativity and they just need a good striker as well. They need quite a lot to Cardiff, don't they? He's a gamble, to say the very least, a roll of the dice, because his goal record from the last 2 seasons isn't mind-blowing. 10 goals over 56 league games. Wasn't a starter for Troyes last season and made most of his appearances off the bench. Troyes ended up being relegated, and it's got to be said the bottom end of League One is pretty poor. I'd probably say comparable to the bottom half of the Championship, if I'm being brutally honest. So his recent career isn't something to shout about. What you can look at, though, is this amazing period over 2 seasons where he was averaging a goal every 2 games. That was at Roda in the Dutch second tier and then Cercle Bruges in the Belgian league. Cardiff will be hoping they see that player because for 2 seasons he was brilliant. And that led to him moving for £2.5 million initially to Genk and then moving again to Troyes. So I just don't know if we'll see that player. Cardiff really need him to be that player, but who can say for sure if he will be, particularly when he may struggle for chances in this Cardiff team, the way it's looking at the moment. Hull have signed Man City's Liam Delap on a season-long loan. The 20-year-old striker had loan spells at Stoke and Preston last season, scoring 4 goals in 38 appearances. Justin Peach?
I think he's a really good profile of player. There's been a lot of people saying, "Oh, he failed last season," but it was his first step into senior football, and he went into an absolute dumpster fire. To be polite to Stoke City, let's be honest, they were a weird side last year under Mike O'Neill and Alex Neil. But I think if you want a player who's going to go in and thrive under a coach, then you want him to go and play under Liam Rosenior. To be absolutely blunt, I think Liam Rosenior is going to do a really good job with him. I do believe that. But he's a really good profile of player. He's a good physicality. He makes some really good runs, and he's finishing, especially at academy level, was incredible. He just needs to transfer that into senior football, and I think he's got the potential to do it. He's still only very, very young, and I do think Hull's a really good option for him. And again, I think it's the Liam Rosenior factor that really does get me excited about it. Even though looking at last season, Malcolm Ebiowei didn't quite work out.
Yeah, look, last season was bad. Both his spells at Stoke and Preston were bad. There's just no two ways about it, really, is there? There is a player there, though. We know this. He was very highly rated at City, and you don't play 6 games for the first team as a teenager if you're not a talent. I think from a Hull perspective, it's well worth taking the gamble on someone like him. It seems low risk, and I just get the sense under the right manager, he could be a phenomenal signing. Is Liam Rosenior that manager? Only time will tell. He gives Hull a lot of pace up front. He's good at carrying the ball forwards. We saw that in the spells at Stoke and Preston last season. It was just the goals that were missing. If he adds goals to that, Hull are onto a winner. So I think it's just confidence with him, isn't it? He was scoring goals for fun for Man City's under 23s or B team, whatever they're called. So he clearly has finishing ability. It probably is just confidence is really low after what was a really bad season. 2 goals in, first 2 games of the season or whatever. Then he could be firing for fun, couldn't he, for Hull? So, yeah, don't really know, but it's definitely you've got to take the gamble with this kind of player. And yeah, if it does pay off, then Hull could be laughing to the bank, couldn't they? Ethan Laird has joined Birmingham on a permanent deal. The 21-year-old right-back moves from Manchester United for a reported fee of $750,000. He's agreed a 3-year deal, spent last season on loan at QPR and had spells at Bournemouth and Swansea prior to that. Justin, I think this is an unbelievable signing.
£750,000 for a 21-year-old wing-back who at Swansea was very, very good. Shouldn't have gone to Bournemouth. And in the first half of the season, last season at QPR, again, was very, very good. One of the outstanding performers at fullback. £750,000. Manchester United have had their pants down. They're not going to fix Old Trafford. They're going to fix Old Trafford with business like that, are they? Jesus. Honestly, that is such a good deal. And again, 21 years old, Ethan Laird's got so much time to develop. This has been a really good summer for Birmingham, and there's no way we were getting carried away earlier by asking the questions that if their transfer business continues in the same vein as it is, that they could be contenders. I'm getting really, really good things from Birmingham City at the moment. This is a really good signing. He's got all the attributes you need from an attacking wing back. We've spoken at length about Laird quite a few times, but he's a complete shift from Maxim Collin, who was a very safe fullback, no thrills going forward, but very solid defensively. And I think that's the big change. He's not quite as good as Collin defensively, but going forwards, he will offer a hell of a lot. But he's got time to refine his game a little bit. I can't say anything else, really. I praise his signing monumentally. This is a really, really good deal for Birmingham City. And again, they're having everybody's pants down. What's going on? This is ridiculous. Where's this Birmingham City been over the last 5 or 6 years? It's crazy.
Yeah, Birmingham's business over the last year and this window in particular, eye-catching to say the least, isn't it? Considering they're so poorly run under BHSL, they've played an absolute blinder. In the last year, they've signed Tariff Chung, Christian Bielik, Tyler Roberts, Ethan Laird, and Emmanuel Longello for a total of less than $5 million. They spent around $10 million on them. I'd probably still be thinking that's good business. All of them are 25 and younger as well, by the way. It's one of the most impressive starts to a transfer window I've seen in a long time. And Birmingham have gone from being a side I wasn't too fussed about next season. I wasn't expecting them to do much. Now I'm thinking they could do something. They might even be a dark horse because it's just such an impressive window. And they still need to strengthen in a few positions. That's undeniable. But a remarkable few signings at that cost certainly gets you excited, doesn't it?
The thing is, even if they do okay this year, and Birmingham City finish 14th, 13th, 12th, wherever, I think that's a good year for Birmingham City because these signings are bedding in. They've had a good year. They're still young. Next year, they're going to be better. And the value is just going to keep going up and up and up,
Yeah.
Which is only going to serve Birmingham positives going forwards in the future. It's the same ethos that most clubs, I think, need to take in the Championship. It's that signing young hungry players, developing them and selling them, and then reinvesting that in your squad, and that will slowly, if you follow Brentford's philosophy, they'll slowly improve you, and you get high quality players. Really, really good business from Birmingham City, and again, they've got a really good coach in John Eustace. It's, I think, a very exciting time to be a Birmingham City fan going into summer. When was the last time they could say that? Genuinely, when was the last time they could say that? We're talking, I don't know, 13 years ago?
It's certainly the first time I'm excited about heading into a season with Birmingham City since we started this podcast, Justin.
Oh, yeah.
Because over the past few years, they've just been lower half mid-table, haven't they, in the Championship, sniffing at relegation every so often. So, yeah, this is a really, really bright summer, and I never expected it to happen, but here we are. It's very, very exciting. Joe Bryan has gone to Millwall on a free transfer. The 29-year-old has recently been let go by Fulham, spent last season on loan at Nice. I was a bit amazed that Joe Bryan is still only 29, so a player as good as him in his peak years, just in getting him on a free, really good signing.
It's not the type of signing Millwall do either, to be honest with you, where they get a really high-profile player, probably in his peak years, maybe coming to the end of his peak years, but certainly in those peak years, convincing him to come to Millwall was a really good sign of intent from Gary Rowett. It's a really good signing. We were speaking about him not too long ago, actually, Joe Bryan. I thought he could have got a contract at a lower end Premier League club. I do stand by that. I think he's got a lot of quality, but certainly we were pitching him to clubs pushing for promotion. I think Millwall are going to be in that category next season, considering the business and the intent that they've shown so far. So, yeah, Joe Bryan's, again, a bit like Ethan Laird, similar discussion. He's got all the attributes that you want from a fullback. He is solid defensively, and he's very good going forwards as well. And he's going to give Millwall a lot of options in that wide left area. I think it's a really, really good signing, and I think it's a smart one as well. They poached him from a number of clubs, if I'm led to believe the reports are correct.
Yeah, Joe Bryan is simply an excellent player at Championship level. Superb when Fulham got promoted a few years ago. Has been brilliant whenever he's been asked to play. I'm sure he would have played more times for Fulham in the past few years at Championship and Premier League level if he wasn't up against an exceptional left-back in Anthony Robinson. I think he'll make Millwall lesser of a rigid side as well. Murray Wallace has made the left-back slot his own pretty much over the past couple of seasons, hasn't he? When Millwall have played with a back four, Joe Bryan offers a lot more going forwards than him and will happily play as a fullback or a wing-back. So an excellent signing. It'll be no surprise to anyone that he was attracting quite a bit of Championship interest. So Millwall have fought off a lot of competition, and that's because he's a damn good player. Swansea have got their summer business underway. They've signed 26-year-old former Hearts forward Josh Ginnelly on a free. He's agreed a 3-year deal, as well as 23-year-old right-back Josh Key from Exeter. They're going to have to pay compensation for him. Two good signings, Justin. Ginnelly in particular looks like he could be a really smart move. His shooting numbers, quite mind-blowing. He scored 12 goals in the league for Hearts last season. He had a total XG of 5.4. He scored from 26% of his shots, which only two players could top in the Championship last season. So his finishing was unbelievable. Scored a couple of worldies along the way too, which won't hurt. Also lightning quick, can play on the right, but really flourished after moving up front and playing as a lone striker. Is worth saying it's by far the best season of his career so far. So could be just a flash in the pan. But if he continues his form from last season, Swansea have a real player on their hands. Would be an excellent replacement for Joel Pirro if he indeed leaves.
I think it's a no frills forward, isn't he? To be really blunt, this might sound harsh, but you know what he offers you. He's got pace and he can shoot. again, it's a really plain way of explaining it. But
What do you mean, no thrills?
well, in terms of no frills forward, he's not exactly a player who's going to collect the ball and take players on and drive at them as successfully as others do. And it's a free transfer, and he's coming from the SPL, where he's just coming off the back of his best season of his career. So for me, it's a no frills scenario. And again, if you're looking at
Does that make 90% of the strikers in the Championship no thrills forwards? Because you don't have many who really run past defenders, do you? And I think Ginelli really is a player who does run past defenders.
No, but you're looking at him from a striker's point of view. I don't think he's going to play as a striker. And I don't think he'd be the best replacement for Joel Pirro, for example. If you looking at the overperformance from his shot conversion, as you were explaining, I'm not criticising. I was trying to praise him, but then you've turned it around. You've turned it around on me. I sound overly critical of him.
Anything positive, Justin? You said he's a no frills forward, and he's not a good replacement for Joel Pirro.
There's nothing wrong with a no frills forward. There's been plenty of no frills forwards.
I don't think he is a no frills forward, and I don't know what you're basing this on.
Yeah, but you're basing it off of several months of his career. Looking before that, he's not really.
I said he's just had one good season.
Yeah,
but it was a really, really good season.
But if I take the Keshi Anderson route, where Keshi Anderson performed exactly the same way, where he scored some spectacular goals and overperformed XG as Josh Ginelli did, you criticise Keshi Anderson, and his injury record didn't help. I know that, but that's the type of player that sort of entered my head when I thought about Josh Ginelli, in that he's pacey, he can cut inside, he's flexible, he's a flexible forward. He's a flexible forward, and he scores some spectacular goals. But is he the player you want to rely on in that final third, especially if his best seasons come at the age of 26? Is he going to continue to improve? I don't know. I don't think he'd be a good replacement for Joel Pirro. I do think they need to get smarter with the recruitment, but I think he's going to add some good depth into that final third and some good options. I just don't back the signing as much as you do.
I was just saying, it could be a really smart bit of business. I'm not saying he's going to be, Ballon d'Or winning next season. Just based off what he did last season, which was an exceptional season, is well worth the gamble. Is what I'm saying.
It's a free transfer. It's a no frills signing. That's
what does no frills signing mean? You've not explained it at all.
No frills is just you get what you get, and you know what you're getting with Josh Ginelli in that. He's going to.
No, you don't, because we were just saying it could be a one-off season.
But you explained his stats. You explained what he did as a forward.
Yes. You're not. We'll move on, because I'm getting very frustrated at you not explaining what a no frills signing or striker is, and we're just getting nowhere. Norwich have signed Spanish winger Boya Sainz on a 3-year contract after he left Turkish club Giresunspor. The 22-year-old scored 9 goals in 32 games last season. I actually like the signing, Justin. I've been looking into him, and he looks a really exciting player. Very good dribbler, loads of pace, very direct, likes to cut inside from the left. Was one of the standout players in a pretty poor Giresunspor team. I mean, they only scored 42 goals, so for him to get 9 is really good going. The Turkish league, decent standard league as well, plus 22 years old, signing a player who was playing regularly at that level last season could be an excellent bit of business. So look, Norwich's signings so far I haven't been too enthused by. This is more my cup of tea, because he could develop into a really good player at 22 years old. That's what Norwich should be doing, signing young, developing to sell on.
Nothing like looking at the numbers and getting overexcited. Is that right?
No,
Okay, I agree with you on a technical level.
You tell me what research you've done into Boya Sainz then, Justin.
What research have I done into Boya Sainz? I just looked at his numbers. Exactly the same as you.
Exactly.
I don't want to rely too heavily on YouTube Reels, because it's mainly just players just throwing balls into the back of the net, and that's fine. But numbers-wise, he's a technical player. And Norwich need more of that in their final third. It was very bland last season, which is why Teemu Pukki didn't score as many goals as he did, because there wasn't a lot around him, to be really blunt. So if you're getting players in that final third who are quality, and again, if you're building it around Ashley Barnes, who's a very basic no frills forward in that final third, then I think it's a really good addition. It's just whether or not he can settle in the Championship, which is always a question when you've got players coming from different leagues.
I can accept no frills forward for Ashley Barnes because he's a shithouse and works hard. That I can understand. Josh Ginley being a no frills forward doesn't make any sense at all. Moving on, Plymouth have signed defender Lewis Gibson following his departure from Everton. The 22-year-old was on loan at Bristol Rovers last season and previously had loans at Reading and Sheffield Wednesday. Another really good signing by Plymouth Argyle, which is not a surprise at all considering this is Plymouth Argyle we're talking about. He had struggled on loan before, but then flourished at Bristol Rovers last season. He was their best defender. And if you ask people who watched him last season, they'll tell you he's a championship defender. Did miss a few games through injury, but when he was unavailable, Bristol Rovers won just 13% of their games compared to 39% when he did play. That is a pretty insane stat, isn't it? So the data backs him up as a really solid defender, good with his feet too. Considering he's only 22, they're getting him on a free. It's just an extremely clever signing. And that's no surprise, as I say, with Plymouth Argyle, is it? He's got loads of room to grow as a player, could develop into an excellent defender at this level.
Really good, really good. He's a player that's impressed me, well, especially last season at Bristol Rovers, as you say. He's a comfortable player at the back, and that's really what Steven Schumacher's trying to build the team around. Is he wants to continue his philosophy of playing through the thirds. It's a risk, but if you've got those players in who are comfortable with the ball at their feet and they're comfortable with taking risks, then it's going to work. The way Joe Bottom played last season was a little bit similar to, I guess, Schumacher, but they're a bit more aggressive, heavy metal going forwards. And again, there was a huge reliance on getting the ball out from the back. And I say that's where Gibson stepped in and was a player that thrived defensively. He's going to settle in. But I do think Plymouth's recruitment, I think, is quite smart in that they're getting young players in. It's recruitment. Smart. Yeah, it's very smart. But even if they get relegated, they go down to League One with possibly depending on who gets relegated with them, they go down to League One with one of the best squads in League One, and they got the really good chance of coming back up. Similar to Luton's recruitment, really, in the Premier League. Luton, Plymouth are punching above the weight, but they're adding some really smart profile players into their squad. And it's just whether or not they can back that up in different positions, because defensively they've done very well. They just need to add some depth into that final third and creatively as well.
Let's move on, Justin. We're going to have to fly through all of these because time is getting on a bit. Matthias Martins is staying with Watford for another season. The 19-year-old Brazilian moved to Vicarage Road on loan from Udinese last January and will be staying on loan for the coming season. He came with a fair bit of fanfare initially, but barely played, and I kind of forgot about him, Justin.
He scored a really good goal, didn't he? I remember that. He scored a brilliant goal and then just completely disappeared off the face of the earth.
I'm not sure he did. I remember him in his first game, I think, putting on an incredible assist, or a really good assist anyway. I don't think he scored.
Yeah, it might have been that. And then he just, fell off the face of the earth. And, Watford needed a bit of a spark and inspiration. So I think as the season wore on, I was a bit confused as to why they weren't utilising him in. But yeah, he's come back in, fair enough. They've added some more depth. And if he can have the impact that we think he had in that first game he played, then he's going to be a good player next season. But again, a lot of ifs, buts and maybes. But it depends whether or not he's an Ishmael player as well. That's the key thing, because Ishmael plays a very unique style of football that players need to adapt to, as opposed to bringing in players who play that style.
Meanwhile, there's been a mini exodus from Watford over the past week. Craig Cathcart has left after 9 years at Vicarage Road. He departs with more than 250 appearances under his belt. Defender William Troost-Ekong has been sold for £1 million to Greek side PAOK. Portuguese midfielder Domingos Quina has taken the well-trodden route from Watford to Udinese. He moves for an undisclosed fee. Defender Mario Gaspar has mutually agreed to terminate his deal. His spell was quite disappointing at Watford. And finally, Tom Cleverley has announced his retirement from football due to injury. The 33-year-old only managed 3 appearances for the Hornets last season. His career feels like he's overachieved, but also underachieved. I can't explain any further than that. Southampton winger Mislav Orsic has completed a transfer to Turkish side Trabzonspor. The Croatian international joined in January for £5 million, made just 5 appearances, and has reportedly been sold for £3.5 million. So that went well. Sheffield Wednesday have brought in Reece James permanently, not that one. He spent last season on loan at Hillsborough from Blackpool, joins for an undisclosed fee. Did very well there, didn't he? Very versatile, just someone who managers seem to really like. Is he that good at championship level? don't think so, but Sheffield Wednesday need bodies, don't they? So that's a good start. Sticking with Wednesday, Marvin Johnson has signed fresh terms to stay with the club. He was out of contract, looked like he could be heading out the door, but has now agreed a new deal. Rotherham have brought in goalkeeper Dylan Phillips on a 2-year deal. He's been a free agent after leaving Cardiff, spent last season on loan in Belgium at Oostende. Quite like Dylan Phillips. He was excellent for Charlton, wasn't he, a few seasons
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Can't see him playing ahead of Victor Johansson, though, unless he goes, which is a distinct possibility. Rotherham have also signed centre-back Grant Hall on a permanent deal following his release by Middlesbrough. The 31-year-old was on loan at the New York Stadium last season. QPR have signed defender Ziad Lekirch after he was released by Fulham. The 20-year-old was on loan at Barnsley last season. I assume he's a squad player. Only made 5 starts in League One last season, so doesn't thrill me too much, I've got to say. Meanwhile, Chris Martin has left the club after his contract expired. QPR are reportedly looking to get him back, though, although they face competition from elsewhere. Huddersfield have re-signed winger Josh Koroma and fullback Josh Ruffles to 2-year contracts. The pair were released at the end of their old deals, but will now be staying on. Middlesbrough have signed Ireland youth forward Alex Gilbert from Brentford on a 4-year contract. The 21-year-old turned down the offer of a new deal so he could join Michael Carrick's side. And Mark Harris has left Cardiff. The 24-year-old has been at Cardiff since he was 7 and made 35 appearances for them last season. Quite a few months for him. He's gone from being part of the Wales squad at the World Cup to being released by Cardiff. So, yeah, interesting few months for him. Any other business? Huddersfield have named a new sporting director to replace Lee Bromby. Mark Cartwright spent 7 years at Stoke as technical director, where he was mainly in charge of recruitment. He was responsible for the signings of the likes of Marko Arnautovic, Xherdan Shaqiri and Bojan, but was also responsible for that disastrous transfer window, which has essentially crippled Stoke for the last few years. He was most recently sporting director of the United Soccer League, and Huddersfield say his main roles will be player recruitment and contract management. What do you think, Justin?
A bit like the Cleverley syndrome, isn't it? It's sort of overachieved in terms of recruitment and underachieved massively. I think it's a smart appointment. Lee Bromby, I don't think you could have got worse than Lee Bromby's spell last year, could you? It was really, really bad. And I think Mark Cartwright's coming in having reflected, I'd hope, on that spell at Stoke. That was a disaster, and learned from it and spent some time in the US, which is actually a very, very good place to go out and learn the technical side of football, because there's a lot that they do in the US that is actually pretty spot on from a technical level, from contract management to building squads. It is the place to be. I think a lot of managers go out there to learn, and so do a lot of technical directors. So it's a good place to be. And I think coming from that spell is probably going to stand him in good stead. And obviously he's developed that relationship with Kevin Nargo through his time in the US, which again is a positive. You need that transparency. So smart appointment. Hopefully it's more Stoke between 2015, 2018 as opposed to that onwards.
I think they were in the Championship in 2018, weren't they?
2014.
And they also signed the likes of Kevin Wimmer and a few other players around that time. So maybe not that period. I think you're looking like early days at Stoke. But the thing is, he's not going to have as much money to work with at Huddersfield, is he, as he did at Stoke. And it was kind of like you hand him a check and he goes one or two ways, really, didn't it, when he was at Stoke? So maybe now that he's a bit more restricted, he'll have to be a bit more clever at that. Championship clubs will be able to name 9 substitutes from next season. What does this mean, Justin?
I don't know. They get extra 2 people on the subs bench. Subs benches don't have enough room as it is. This is ridiculous. You see people sat on water coolers and cooling boxes. This isn't football, Ryan. This isn't football.
Okay. People were saying, it will benefit the bigger sides, and that may be true to an extent, but I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. I mean, if it did make that much of a difference, then the Championship clubs wouldn't have voted it through, would they? Which is ultimately the whole reason why it's now a thing. So, I don't think it really matters that much, to be honest. And finally, Millwall's owner and chairman John Bevelson has died at the age of 70 following a tragic accident on Tuesday, the club have said. The American businessman first became involved with the Lions in 2006. He became a significant shareholder of the club in 2007 and went on to replace Stuart Till as chairman in the same year. He's overseen 2 promotions to the Championship. The club say he has presided over some of the greatest moments in Millwall's history, and his influence in providing the platform for those was immeasurable. Incredibly sad news, Justin. In a purely football sense, seemed like a great owner.
Yeah, he did. And again, the direction he's taken Millwall to stabilise them as a Championship club, to turn them into, or to allow others to turn them into a team gunning for promotion, I think is quite staggering based on their budget. And good owners are hard to come by, and John Barrowson was one of them. So it's a huge shame that this has happened, and hopefully Millwall can use it as a bit of a motivation to really propel them forward this season and play in his memory, I guess. So, cool. And it's really sad news.
Yeah, he's basically taken Millwall from a mid-table League One side to a stable top half Championship side, and I completely agree with everything you just say there. Justin, we have a habit of, and just the general media, I suppose, have a habit of focusing a lot on the bad football club owners. John Barrowson was certainly one of the good guys, and not just in terms of running a football club in a humble manner, but also the tributes that have come out for him. You've got former players saying he was a friend. I imagine a lot of players have never even met the owner of their football club. So incredibly tragic news. Of course, we send our condolences to his friends, family, and everyone attached to Millwall Football Club. Let's finish off with a game of Scott High or Ryan Low. Justin, this is the game where Justin's going to give me 3 questions and 4 options. All I have to do is rank them in order from highest to lowest. I'm yet to get one of these right, so hopefully that changes today. Justin, can I have the first one, please?
I have a feeling you might do all right today. Cool. So the first one is Watford managers and who's managed more games. God. So actually going through their Wikipedia, that's actually incredible how many managers I could pick from. So your managers are Slaven Bilic, Vladimir Ivic, Marco Silva, and Slavisa Jokanovic. A lot of Iviches.
Bilic, Silva, Ivic, and who was the other one?
Jokanovic.
Oh, God. I don't think I'm going to do very well on this one because it's such a crazy time frame. I'm going to put Ivic bottom, then Bilic. I can't really remember how long Marco Silva was there for.
I completely forgot he was Watford manager.
Yeah, I forget about it a bit as well. I'll go Ivic, Bilic, Silva, Jokanovic from bottom to top. So top, Jokanovic.
Congratulations, Ryan. You got them.
I got it, really?
You got them. Yeah.
I did not give myself any hope there at all.
Yeah. So Ivic had 22 games in charge, Bilic 25, Silva 26, and Jokanovic 36.
Yeah. I cannot remember Marco Silva being there.
No, neither can I. And I thought that might stump you. And again, Ivic was there from obviously start of the season to January. So
I just remember Ivic being such a short period of time. And then I was thinking, I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad to finally get off the mark in this game. Next one, Justin.
The next one is who's had the most yellow cards in the Championship?
God, so over their careers?
Yeah, over their careers. It was a weird metric, but this will be right. The order will be right. So your players are Ben Pearson, Carl Henry, Henry Lansbury, and Danny Fox.
Oh God. Pearson, Henry,
Lansbury, Fox. That's confusing.
Right.
You've got Carl Lansbury, Henry Lansbury.
Right. Well, Ben Pearson has a ridiculous number of yellow cards for the number of games he plays. I'm just wondering if his career is that long. Carl Henry, I usually think of as a bit of more of a Premier League player, but I don't think he actually played that many games in the Premier League. So I think it's between those two for the top one. I'll go Carl Henry top, Ben Pearson, Danny Fox, Henry Lansbury.
It's completely wrong.
Is it? Okay.
Your top player
straight back down to earth.
Yeah, with a bump. Your top player is Henry Lansbury. He's technically the dirtiest player in the Championship ever.
Really?
90
I just
yellow
thought because
cards.
he spent so long in the Premier League as well and barely played for Villa when he was there.
He did volley Ryan Manning, so maybe that's a telling of the personality and character Henry Lansbury is. Volleyed Ryan Manning off the ball, that is. So Henry Lansbury is top with 90. Then it's Ben Pearson with 68. So quite a big drop-off.
Lansbury's got 90.
90 yellow cards. Then it's Danny Fox with 66. He surprised me because he's just comes across as a southerner, really nice guy. Yeah, doesn't come across as someone who's going to kick people, is what I'm saying. And it's Carl Henry, possibly the biggest shithouse, I think, that I can think of off the top of my head. If you tell me shithouse, I go Kevin Muscat and Carl Henry. 61 yellow cards.
That surprises me. Okay, fair enough. Final one, Justin?
Your final one, I'm moving away from football for this. I'm going to films, mainly because you did to me with Star Wars. And also, I was there 10:30 last night, couldn't think of another category. And I just thought, Christopher Nolan films. We'll go. Christopher Nolan films.
Okay, I'm into this.
It's his highest grossing films.
Right.
So, yeah, his highest grossing films. And obviously, this is an advert for Oppenheimer. If anyone wants to go and see it, this is your ad. It's free.
I will point out they are not paying us to say that.
That's a good point. Yeah, we'll point that one out.
We've legally got to say that.
So your films are Interstellar, The Prestige, Inception, and Batman Begins.
If you throw in A Dark Knight, then that'll be straight to the top. I'm not sure about the others. The Prestige. I haven't seen
The Prestige. Have you not? Oh my god! Yeah, it is.
What were the others? Sorry,
film. Interstellar, Inception, and Batman Begins.
Oh, Inception. I think when I'm thinking Batman Begins, I'm thinking the comic book superhero factor has to be taken into account, but I don't think that was as well regarded as the Dark Knights were. So I'll go Inception top. I think that's one of the highest grossing films ever. Then I'll go Batman Begins, then Interstellar, then The Prestige.
You've got two right.
Which ones did I get wrong?
Interstellar and Batman Begins.
Wrong way round.
Yes.
I knew Batman Begins wasn't that well regarded, and I should have really thought.
Yeah. So Prestige brought in 175 million. Batman Begins only 300 million, and it's a cracking film. Then Interstellar with 675 million, and then Inception at 826 million.
Yeah, I always thought Inception would be top. I just thought superhero factor may boost Batman Begins up a bit more, but there you go. That's Scott High and Ryan Lowe, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. Thank you for listening wherever you are. This has been a weekly news roundup of everything going on in the Championship, and we'll be back again. Will we be back again next week? I think we will, with another news roundup next week, or maybe we won't be. I can't remember, to be honest. But we'll definitely be back again next week, and we'll be back again on Sunday, where me and Justin have another episode lined up for you. Bit of an interesting one. We're going to rank the top 10 worst transfers in Championship history. So that's going to be a bit of fun. We were just talking about some of the best ever in Championship history. Now let's talk about some utter shite. So we look forward to seeing you then on Sunday. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.